Good morning. I want to say thank you to Congressman Bridenstine, to Ms. Biacco, to Dr. Jacobs, and to Ms. Nikaktar for being here and for your willingness to serve in the important positions to which you've been nominated. We have 4 well-qualified nominees before our committee today. Congressman James Bridenstine has been nominated to serve as the next NASA Administrator. He was elected in 2012 to represent Oklahoma's 1st Congressional District and currently serves on the House Armed Services Committee and the Science, Space, and Technology Committee. Congressman Bridenstine also has a distinguished military career, beginning in the Navy, flying the E-2C Hawkeye off the USS Abraham Lincoln aircraft carrier, from which he flew combat missions in Iraq and Afghanistan. While on active duty, he transitioned to the F-18 Hornet and flew as an aggressor at the Naval Strike and Air Warfare Center. After leaving active duty, Congressman Bridenstine flew counter-drug missions in Central and South America in the Navy Reserve, and currently is a member of the 137th Special Operations Wing of the Oklahoma Air National Guard. During his tenure in Congress, Representative Bridenstine has established a reputation as a leader on space policy. In fact, one of his most well-known supporters is the former astronaut and the second human to step foot on the moon, Colonel Buzz Aldrin. Another supporter, John Hamre, former Deputy Secretary of Defense under President Clinton and current President and CEO of the Center for Strategic and International Studies, said of him, and I quote, "I've worked with members of Congress for 40 years. Only very rarely have I seen a member of Congress with such intensity and sophistication on an urgent national priority," end quote. I know that many on this committee, particularly the ranking member, are passionate about the space program and the inspiring work of NASA. Congressman Bridenstine, we look forward to hearing more about your vision for the agency. We're also joined today by Dana Biacco, who has been nominated to serve as a Commissioner of the Consumer Product Safety Commission. Born and raised in Yorkville, Ohio, Ms. Biacco joined the law firm of Jones Day in 1998 and became a partner in 2007. She's one of the founding partners of Jones Day's Boston office, which opened in 2011. Ms. Biacco has dedicated her legal career to product safety and liability issues that will serve her well at the CPSC. Currently, the CPSC is led by a chairman who does not have a functioning majority. Earlier this month, we reported favorably Anne Marie Burkle to be chairman and to an additional term on the commission. It is my hope that the Senate will prioritize the Burkle and Biacco nomination soon so we can move swiftly towards establishing a chairman with a functioning majority at the CPSC. Neil Jacobs has been nominated to serve as the Assistant Secretary of Commerce for Environmental Observation and Prediction. If confirmed, he will serve as one of the Deputy Administrators of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Dr. Jacobs is currently the Chief Atmospheric Scientist at Panasonic Avionics Corporation, where he directs the research and development of the Aviation Weather Observing Program as well as the company's numerical forecast models. He is the chair of the American Meteorological Society's Forecast Improvement Group and also serves on the World Meteorological Organization's Aircraft-Based Observing Systems expert team. Prior to joining Panasonic in 2005, Dr. Jacobs worked on various analyses and modeling projects, including NASA's Earth Systems Science Program, NOAA's Satellite Program, and the Department of Energy's Ocean Margins Program. Dr. Jacobs' experience makes him well-tailored to serve in a leadership role at NOAA. Nikaktar has been nominated to serve as Assistant Secretary of Commerce for Industry and Analysis. Ms. Nikaktar is currently a partner at Cassidy Levy Kent, a leading international trade law firm. For over a decade, Ms. Nikaktar has successfully represented U.S. businesses, particularly those in the industrial, agricultural, chemical, and steel sectors, in international trade law matters, including trade remedy matters, customs matters, and World Trade Organization dispute settlement. Prior to private practice, she served at the Department of Commerce, advising on legal and regulatory matters related to the enforcement of U.S. trade laws and bilateral trade negotiations, where she received several awards for her work. Her technical expertise makes Ms. Nikaktar a well-qualified candidate to run the Industry and Analysis Unit at the International Trade Administration. As I've noted, all of these nominees are well-qualified for the positions to which they've been nominated, and I look forward to their swift confirmation. Once again, I want to thank all of you for appearing today, for testifying, and for your willingness to fill these critical posts. At this point, I will turn to Ranking Member Nelson for any opening remarks he'd like to make. Senator Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to welcome our nominees, and I want to thank you for your public service, and also thank you for offering yourselves for public service. In the interest of time, my opening focus will be on the NASA nomination, and I'll include a statement in the record with regard to the other witnesses. The chairman has already said it, that of course I am passionate about NASA having a qualified and elected leader. And it comes from the deep respect that I have for NASA. Indeed, NASA is a family in many ways. And for everything that the space program does to advance our national security, our economy, our understanding of the cosmos, and of ourselves, and for the hope and inspiration that NASA provides to all. It also comes, this deep respect for NASA, comes from having witnessed very directly the tragic consequences when NASA leadership has failed us. We have 3 new human space flight vehicles right now that are at the most critical phase of their development. We have over 70 ambitious science missions in operation and 50 more under development. Now, as much as ever, NASA needs and deserves an administrator who is up to the challenge of leading the agency through this critical juncture. We are about to embark on putting Americans back into space on American rockets within 1.5 years, 2 years. And we are about to embark within 2 years on the start of sending humans all the way to Mars and to bring them back safely. And that big rocket will launch within 2 years, the largest rocket ever. And so failure at this particular juncture could jeopardize the lives of brave astronauts and set back the search for life beyond Earth for decades. And failure is not an option. The NASA administrator should be a consummate space professional who is technically and scientifically competent and is a skilled executive. More importantly, the administrator must be a leader who has the ability to unite scientists, engineers, commercial space interests, policymakers, the Congress, and the public on a shared vision for future space exploration. Now, Congressman Bridenstine, you have been nominated. I respect that and respect the process. And we want to get into the process of understanding how you would meet these criteria. As I have said, NASA is a family. This committee has heard me say many times, NASA is not political. The leader of NASA should not be political. The leader of NASA should not be bipartisan. The leader of NASA should be nonpartisan. And when that has occurred, that it has been partisan in the past, we've had a disaster. And I have shared with you one of those disasters in our conversation earlier this morning. While your time as a pilot and your service to our country in the military is certainly commendable, it doesn't make you qualified to make the complex and nuanced engineering, safety, and budgetary decisions for which the head of NASA must be accountable. What is troubling to members of this committee is your past statements on climate change are troubling, as compared to your most recent statements on climate change. And from a scientific perspective, it has sparked great concern from climate experts as to your statements in the past. But that brings me to my greatest concern about your nomination. Your recent public service career does not instill the confidence about your leadership or ability to bring people together. Unity is so important in NASA instead of division. What your record is, and you will have a chance to discuss it, is your record and your behavior in Congress has been divisive, and it's been extreme as any that we have seen in Washington. And this senator is wondering, how does that fit with a leader of a technical agency where unity is often right on the line as to what is going to happen in success or failure of a mission or a program? You have advocated for discriminatory policies toward the LGBT community. That runs contrary to the civil rights of Americans. And on the House floor, you had called President Obama dishonest, incompetent, and vengeful. And you followed up by calling Vice President Biden equally unfit and even more embarrassing, end of quote. But the divisive behavior and remarks doesn't stop there, and it hasn't been reserved just for Democrats. You attacked Speaker John Boehner for reaching across the aisle. You later tweeted your opposition to Paul Ryan because he was critical of the vile remarks that candidate Donald Trump had made about sexually assaulting women. You made television commercials and thus has evoked the comments that have been made publicly by our colleague, Senator Rubio. You made television commercials deriding his work to find common ground on immigration and claiming that he was working to make America less safe. And that's in the transcript of those TV commercials that you cut. Later in Arizona, the GOP challenger to Senator McCain in his reelection in 2014, you accused, the GOP challenger had accused Senator McCain of being directly responsible for the rise of ISIS. And then you endorsed that challenger in her Republican primary against Senator McCain. I think most of us here would believe that Senator McCain is an American hero. And I can tell you also, as a bipartisan member of the Armed Services Committee, where he chairs, I can tell you that those who would do our country harm have no greater enemy than John McCain. And you've supported the Senate Conservatives Fund, a political action committee that opposed Senator McConnell, opposed him in his primary, and any number of other Republican senators who did not meet the committee's, the Republican Conservatives Fund's ideals. So, Congressman, you've gone to great lengths to try to convince folks, and I enjoyed our visit this morning, that you want to keep NASA a bipartisan, nonpartisan place and to work across party lines. But that's not what you said in a January 2014 at a convention in South Carolina. And I'm going to quote your words. Quote, you've got collusion between Republicans and Democrats in Washington, D.C. They're coming together and they're making deals. You've got Republicans and Democrats trying to come together. But what we need is fighters. We need people who will stand up and say, no, we're not going to do this anymore. End of quote. So, Congressman, on behalf of every member who has devoted their career to reaching across the aisle to build consensus and to find working solutions for the American people, I want you to know that this senator is quite skeptical. And I take offense at that kind of quote, that we need fighters, not people coming together, not you've got Republicans and Democrats trying to come together. That line of thinking is why Washington is broken. NASA represents the best of what we can do as a people. And NASA is one of the last refuges of partisan politics. And when it has got partisan in the past, we've gotten in trouble. NASA needs a leader who will unite us, not divide us. Respectfully, Congressman Bridenstine, I think you've got a long way to go to prove to be that leader. Mr. Chairman, that's my comments.
Thank you, Senator Nelson. We're going to turn to our panel. Before we do that, and we're going to start on my left and your right with Congressman Bridenstine with your opening statements. I would ask you, if you can, to confine your remarks to about 5 minutes, and obviously we'll include your entire written statements in the record. I know that. And so that's how we're going to proceed. The statements will be in the record. Obviously, we want to give our members as many opportunities to ask questions as we possibly can. Before we allow Congressman Bridenstine to proceed, though, however, he is a home state senator and a member of this committee. Senator Inhofe is here to make his introduction. So Senator Inhofe is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm pleased to introduce the real Jim Bridenstine, a friend, a colleague, a fellow pilot, a resident of our city of Tulsa. We have a couple of things in common. One is we're both pilots and have an extensive aviation background, and the other is we both served the 1st Congressional District of Oklahoma. He actually is serving today in the district that I was first elected to in the House. I believe his background as an aviator, a lifelong passion for space, and efforts in Congress to modernize our nation's space program will serve him well as the next NASA administrator. Jim has dedicated much of his adult life to serving his country, first as an active duty Navy pilot in Iraq and Afghanistan, serving as an instructor in the Naval Strike and Air Warfare Center, and as a naval reservist combating drug trafficking in Central and South America. Jim currently serves as a major in the Oklahoma Air National Guard. He is a recognized leader on space and weather issues. In 2015, Space News named him one of 5 space leaders making a difference, citing his efforts to ensure the more effective use of satellite-based weather data, promoted responsible opportunities for commercial space launches, and recognized the intersection of space and national security of the United States. Jim's interest in aviation and space was obvious when he served as the director of the Tulsa Air and Space Museum and organized the Quick Trip Air and Rocket Racing Show in 2010, which I happened to fly in. NASA is poised to unleash the economic and potential of coordinated public and private investment in space activities, and I look forward to that leadership. Let me see this thing, if you would. I would comment that since it was brought up as to what are the qualifications, that 2 of the very well-respected people, Buzz Aldrin and Greg Autry, made the joint statement, quote, "It doesn't take a rocket science to run NASA." And they go into the details as to the job that James Webb had done at one time. And I'm quoting them now in a joint statement, finding another Webb is no easy task. The President considered several excellent candidates, some of whom we personally admire. But in the spirit of Webb's leadership, U.S. Representative Jim Bridenstine is the President's nominee, and we heartily endorse him. So it's my pleasure to introduce my House member, Jim Bridenstine.
Thank you, Senator Inhofe. Congressman Bridenstine, please proceed with your opening statement.
Thank you, Senator Inhofe, for that very kind introduction. Mentioning my pilot experience, I recognize I am the junior pilot from the state of Oklahoma in the Oklahoma delegation, and I appreciate your help and support and your service to the same constituents I now serve. Thank you to Chairman Thune and Ranking Member Nelson, members of the Senate Committee on Commerce, Space, and Transportation. It is an honor to appear before you today as the nominee for NASA Administrator. I want to recognize my family who is here with me, my wife, Michelle, and my children, Walker, Sarah, and Grant. Without their love and support, I would not be here in front of you today. NASA is an extraordinary agency with an extremely talented and diverse workforce. It has brought about civilization-changing events and scientific discoveries. It has inspired billions of people, and it represents what is exceptional about the United States of America, a spirit of adventure, a spirit of exploration, and the thirst for greater understanding of the Earth and the cosmos. I am truly humbled by the prospect of leading this agency. I grew up reading about the heroes of the Apollo era, heroes like Gene Cernan, a naval aviator, and the last man so far to walk on the moon. Stories like his inspired me to be a pilot and to serve my country in uniform. NASA is at a critical time in history. Humanity is ready to go to deep space for the first time in 45 years. To do this sustainably, we must develop a consensus agenda driven by science and based on national interests. Should I be confirmed, it will be my intention to build off the work accomplished by the great people at NASA during the last administration and to move forward by following the guidance of the NASA Transition Authorization Act, appropriations legislation, and the science decadal surveys. We must all do this together. No agency can match NASA's return on investment for taxpayer dollars, not just in inspiration, exploration, and science, but also in its direct impact to the U.S. economy. For example, NASA's contributions to aeronautics have made air travel significantly cleaner, safer, and quieter. As a pilot myself, I hope to lead NASA through the next era of X-planes, or experimental planes. There are many near-term opportunities for NASA, none more than to once again launch American astronauts on American rockets from American soil and to safely return them home. The first combined launch of the Space Launch System and the Orion Multipurpose Crew Vehicle is drawing near. These two vehicles will be the backbone for returning humans to deep space and fulfilling the NASA Transition Authorization Act's goal of getting humans to Mars. I believe in this administration's vision of getting to Mars by using the moon as a proving ground and through a grand unity of effort by NASA, the administration, Congress, industry, and our international partners. In addition, NASA's commercial crew partners are drawing closer to reestablishing a capability we have not had since the retirement of the space shuttles, to regularly launch Americans to the International Space Station on American rockets. Of course, the most important part of every human spaceflight mission is making sure that our astronauts return home safely. I know what it means for lives to be on the line when making difficult decisions, including my own life. And if confirmed, I will work to promote a NASA culture where safety, transparency, and independent oversight are celebrated. In order to move humans into deep space, we must have a vibrant, commercial, low Earth orbit economy. The future of LEO, including the International Space Station, will be a priority if I am confirmed. I also plan to lead a focused space technology program which will form the foundation of a future expansion of economic activity in LEO and beyond. NASA has inspired generations of scientists, engineers, and explorers, and it continues to do so with incredible discoveries across NASA's science divisions. These include the search for ancient and extant life with the upcoming Mars 2020 and Europa missions, the launch of the James Webb Space Telescope, Parker Solar Probe, and Earth science missions like NISAR, ICESat-2, and so much more that will help us better understand our changing planet. It is an honor of a lifetime to be nominated by the President and to be considered by the Senate for NASA Administrator. Working together, America can lead the way forward in space, inspiring the world, unlocking the mysteries of our universe, and motivating a new generation of young women and young men. Thank you for allowing me to appear before you, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you, Congressman. Ms. Biacco.
Good morning, Chairman Thune, Ranking Member Nelson, and members of the Committee on Commerce, Science, and Transportation. I am humbled and honored to be before you today as a nominee for a vital, independent agency, the Consumer Product Safety Commission. I'd like to thank President Donald Trump for nominating me and for his confidence. And if I am confirmed by the Senate, I will strive every day to carry out my duties to the American people with focus, clarity, and compassion. I will do so in a manner that is expected by this committee. Please allow me the indulgence of introducing my family and friends who are here with me today. Directly behind me is my husband, Andy Susko. Although we've only been married a very short time, he is a constant source of comfort and support. My daughter, Ava Bruning, is also here today directly behind me. She's a sophomore at the Brimmer and May School in Boston, Massachusetts, and she's missing school to be here today, but I think this is a wonderful opportunity and a rare opportunity for her to see our government in action, and I hope this experience for her is a profound one. My parents, Joyce and Jerry Biacco, are here from Ohio. My sister, Stacy Williams, and my niece, Morgan Williams, are also here. My stepson and daughter-in-law, Matt and Nicole Susko, are watching online from their home in New Hampshire. My other stepson, John, and his brand new wife of 3 days are in Illinois. I'm also lucky to have several of my colleagues and friends here today. But I would also like to take the time to thank all of the good, hardworking people of my hometown of Yorkville, Ohio, for the hundreds of notes of support that they have extended to my family. They remind me of what enormous responsibility I will have if confirmed, as they are just a small sample of the American people who I and the agency as a whole will work for. I was born in West Virginia, raised in Ohio. I attended Ohio University, where I received a degree in journalism. I was accepted into the 4-year night school program at Duquesne University School of Law in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. During my last year of night school and for 1 year post-graduation, I was the law clerk for the Honorable Gustav Diamond in the Western District, in District Court for the Western District of Pennsylvania. I joined Jones Day as an associate in 1998. I became a partner of the firm in 2007, and in 2011, the firm asked me to go to Boston and open our Boston office. In my opinion, Jones Day and the lawyers and staff at this global law firm are second to none, not only in terms of intellectual and legal acumen, but also in terms of mentorship, collegiality, and client service. I have learned something from each and every one of them, and over the last 19 years at Jones Day, I'd like to thank them all for their contributions, as my successes have come, not on my own, but always as part of a team. The Consumer Product Safety Commission plays an important role in the safety of our nation's consumers. If confirmed, I will bring to the Commission all of the skills I have developed and built over my career. I will be guided by the rule of law. I will promote transparency between the Commission and all of its stakeholders, and I will encourage an open-door policy between the Commission and all advocacy groups. Rigorous debate and an open mind to all points of view are essential to any good decision-making process. I will work in a collaborative way with my fellow commissioners if confirmed, and with this committee, because collaboration matters. Safety and the protection of the American people are not bipartisan. They are all-inclusive. The CPSC is charged with a mission that touches on every single person in this room and beyond. My family, your families, and the families across America. And the issues that come before the CPSC are often complicated and require the study and analysis of laws, regulations, science, and the application of common sense. If confirmed, there are substantive areas that I would like to focus on as a commissioner. First, the Commission must have a plan to stay as current as possible on the technology and the new and unique types of products that are coming onto the market every day. We need to understand the data, the science, the processes underlying every product to stay abreast of marketplace dynamics, changing consumer preferences, and to maintain vigilance over emerging hazards. If confirmed, I will draw upon my experiences and I will meet with all stakeholders, continuing my philosophy of touching, seeing, and learning the products to help the Commission stay well informed. Second, I think the Commission must always work to protect consumers from unreasonable risks while balancing the American public's right to have access to affordable product choices and recreational activities. We are all very different people, and our choices and interests are many. Finally, I know the Commission is currently looking at the issue of recall effectiveness, and I look forward to contributing my own ideas and make sure that consumers are being reached across a variety of platforms. Thank you for the opportunity to testify, and thank you for the opportunity to appear before this committee. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Ms. Bialko. Dr. Jacobs, we have an introductory statement from Senator Burr. He is chairing an Intelligence Committee hearing that is underway right now. Wishes he could be here in person, but we will submit that for the record, and so please proceed with your remarks.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman Thune, Ranking Member Nelson, and members of the committee. I would also like to thank the President and Secretary Ross for their trust and confidence in me with this nomination to be Assistant Secretary of Commerce for Environmental Observation and Prediction. If I have the honor of being confirmed, I look forward to working with all of you on the important work performed by NOAA in the areas of observations, analysis, and forecasting. I am the son and grandson of Air Force veterans. My father's F-4 was shot down in Vietnam, and after being rescued, he met my mom, who was working for the American Red Cross in the Philippines. He returned to the Air Force Academy as a flight instructor in Colorado Springs, where I was born. I grew up in Florida at Homestead Air Force Base near Miami, and later moved to South Carolina partly to avoid repeated hurricane strikes. Not long after the move, our house in Charleston was nearly destroyed by Hurricane Hugo. Having spent my entire life close to the ocean, surfing, diving, and fishing, I was naturally drawn towards pursuing an educational path in air-sea interaction and numerical weather prediction. Upon leaving academia, I was part of a startup company that was later acquired by Panasonic. The technology I was involved with was designed to supplement the Radiosonde weather balloon program by transmitting observations collected on aircraft through satellite-based communication systems. The sensor was also installed on several manned and unmanned aerial platforms operated by NASA and the Naval Research Laboratory, as well as NOAA's own P3. My team and I decided early on that we would leverage the peer-reviewed scientific process conducted by NOAA to promote our products. We provided the data free of charge for 4 years so that NOAA scientists could vet the data based on their own quality and reliability standards. Part of this program led to a decade-long public-private academic global modeling effort that rivaled the best in the world. In addition to supporting research at several universities and the National Center for Atmospheric Research, Panasonic also has major facilities in Washington State, New Jersey, Florida, Colorado, and North Carolina. Having witnessed industry's rapid growth across the entire forecast value chain from observation collection to end-user products, I began to wonder what would happen if industry decided to bypass the public sector. This would be a travesty, and the end result would be tax-paying citizens not having access to the best available weather information for the protection of life and property. 2 years ago, my father passed away on my birthday. I wanted to follow in his footsteps, but a medical condition prevented me from being a pilot. At his memorial service, I was humbled by the large turnout of Academy cadets and veterans, and I was compelled to find a way to give back. I knew instantly when I was approached for this position that this was my opportunity to use my specialized knowledge and skills to serve my country. While my formal training and expertise is in the area of observing systems, data assimilation, modeling, and high-performance computing, my real-world experience in structuring public-private, academic, sustainable business models under constrained budgets will play a key role in improving NOAA's observing and predictive capabilities. The U.S. weather enterprise is at a turning point. If we navigate this paradigm shift successfully, the result will be a mutually beneficial outcome for all three sectors, public, private, and academic. If not addressed, the three sectors may find themselves in a competitive situation to the detriment of the American people. The framework for addressing this is outlined in the Weather Research and Forecasting Innovation Act of 2017, and implementing this act will be a top priority. If confirmed, it would be a tremendous honor to help lead such a distinguished organization of scientists, engineers, forecasters, and uniformed officers. I can assure the committee that I will do my absolute best to ensure this team of 12,000 professionals have the resources and leadership needed to produce transparent, objective, and defendable science so that decisions based on this weather and climate information can be made with confidence. I would like to thank my wife, Jen, who is a computational biologist at Duke University, for her support and understanding while balancing her career with raising our two sons, Nicholas and Theodore, ages 4 and 2. Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Nelson, and members of the committee, thank you again for the opportunity to be here. I would be pleased to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Dr. Jacobs. Next up is Ms. Nakaktar, and the Senator from Mississippi, Senator Wicker, has an opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and it is my honor to introduce to the members of the committee Ms. Nakaktar. She is a resident of Maryland. She graduated from UCLA and has her master's and JD degrees from Syracuse University. She's now, among other things, an adjunct professor at Georgetown University. She is not a resident of the state of Mississippi, but we wish she were a resident of Mississippi. The reason I'm introducing her is that she is so well regarded in my home state for her more than decade of service to a number of U.S. industries on international trade matters that are important not only to our economy, but also to the economy of the entire country. Her effective advocacy for food safety, especially when it comes to imports, has been particularly appreciated in my home state of Mississippi. Likewise, her work on behalf of Delta Council, one of the most important economic development organizations in our state, has supported critical economic development in Mississippi and in the entire Gulf region. Ms. Nakaktar is dedicated to instituting equitable international trade policy. She has helped uncover unfair and fraudulent trading practices around the world, practices that were jeopardizing the future growth and prosperity of the United States and our industries. Her work has facilitated needed trade relief while strengthening our potential for growth here at home. The Department of Commerce's efforts to strengthen the global competitiveness of the United States will benefit from Ms. Nakaktar's extensive experience and tireless leadership on international trade. I congratulate her on her nomination and welcome her to today's hearing.
Thank you, Senator Wicker. Ms. Nakaktar.
Thank you, Senator Wicker, for the very kind introduction. I am grateful. Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Nelson, and members of the committee, I thank you for the opportunity to appear here today. I am honored to be considered for the position of Assistant Secretary for Industry and Analysis at the U.S. Department of Commerce. With me today are my husband, Jean Degnan, and my parents, Manijay and Bijan Nakaktar. I am proud to say that my husband and my parents have served our government as federal employees for many, many years. My husband served for over a decade at the Department of Commerce, and my parents served for over 40 years collectively as physicians at the VA hospital taking care of our nation's veterans. My brother, Nersin Nakaktar, also a physician at the VA hospital, had work obligations and is in Minneapolis today where he resides. I am proud to be part of a family that honors government service. I immigrated to America with my family 37 years ago. I can remember from a young age how proud I was to be an American and how I admired the entrepreneurial spirit of Americans, the innovation, the incredible work ethic, and the thriving industries competing on the international stage. I knew growing up that I wanted to be part of the American industrial growth, to be part of the engine that drives the American economy forward. So I went to school to study law and economics. I obtained my Juris Doctor and Master's in Economics from Syracuse University in 2002. I then headed to Washington, D.C. with the hope of entering public service. I was fortunate to begin work at the Department of Commerce. I began my career first as an industry analyst at the Bureau of Industry and Security, and subsequently at the International Trade Administration. I worked with and learned from incredibly smart and talented civil servants there. But at the agency, I learned firsthand that America's commitment to free and fair trade was not always reciprocated. I watched U.S. industry struggle to stay alive in the midst of unfair trade. Our industries were eroding, our output was declining, and good, hardworking Americans were losing their job because our trading partners were not competing fairly. I've audited these foreign companies. I've witnessed firsthand their business strategies of selling goods at less than fair value in order to capture increased market share. As one foreign company official confessed, underselling was in essence, quote, tuition to eventually dominate the U.S. market. This experience instilled in me the need for strong enforcement of our trade laws to level the playing field for American companies and American workers. I joined the private sector several years later as a lawyer, representing industries and trade remedy disputes. Industries in the steel sector, in aquaculture, agriculture, commodity goods, chemicals, and minerals. I'm well aware of the issues our industries face in being competitive, both at home and abroad. I've worked hard, I've worked relentlessly to level the playing field to save American jobs. That's my commitment to U.S. industries when I return to the Department of Commerce. At Industry and Analysis, my goal will be to ensure that U.S. companies are the most competitive in the world. We have to work on creating greater market access for our manufacturing and services sectors, for our technology companies, and for our small and medium-sized businesses. We have to take a serious look at how to reshore jobs and how to revitalize job growth in our most economically depressed regions. We have to look at our industries one by one to determine what constraints they face in becoming more competitive domestically and globally. This requires robust economic analysis and careful evaluation of trade policy options. This requires coordination with other government agencies as well as diplomacy with our trading partners. It involves creative thinking and problem solving. I came to America knowing that this is the greatest country in the world, the driver of technological innovation, where opportunities are boundless and the American dream is accessible to everyone. I want to make sure that my son, my 15-month-old, grows up in a country where he and every American can thrive and succeed, a country that continues to be the world leader in innovation and output. I want to thank my family for supporting my decision to re-enter public service. And if confirmed, I look forward to dedicating my time and service to working for American companies, American workers, and the U.S. government to spur economic growth and to create jobs. I thank you again for the opportunity to be here in front of this committee, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Ms. Nikaktar. I'll start by asking a question of all four of you. I know each of you appreciates the importance of cooperation between the executive branch and Congress. Nevertheless, these confirmation hearings give us an opportunity to underscore that point. So the question is, if confirmed, will you pledge to work collaboratively with this committee and its members and to provide thorough and timely responses to our requests for information?
Yes, sir.
Yes, Chairman.
Yes.
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman, it's very important.
Thank you. Congressman Bridenstine, tell me about your approach to continuing U.S. leadership in space with both the international and commercial partners. How do you see balancing these, what are sometimes competing interests?
Thank you for that question, sir. This does oftentimes in Washington come about as competing interests. Different parts of the space community maybe competing against each other, and then trying to determine what is uniquely American and where can we partner with our international partners. The way I see it, sir, is what we need to do is create architectures that are in the interest of the United States of America, and then ultimately figure out within those architectures what piece can be done with traditional contracts where the United States government purchases, owns, and operates capability, and other types of contracts where we can just buy a service. And each one of these contracts would be different depending on whatever the circumstance is. I would also say that if we are to attain our highest ideals and achieve our most ambitious objectives, we absolutely need to continue our international partnerships. And we've had tremendous success on the International Space Station and a host of other capabilities. And certainly it would be my objective, should I be confirmed, to continue those partnerships and even grow those partnerships. Ultimately, the goal being to get to Mars and again to return to the Moon as a proving ground. And that's going to require not just funds from the United States, but it's going to require partners from around the world.
Thank you. Ms. Biacco, I say this with some regret, but unnecessary partisanship has plagued the CPSC in recent years, and given that agency's important role in protecting American consumers, it's an issue that is of great concern to me and one which I have pressed with previous nominees to the CPSC. It's important that we have leadership at the CPSC that's committed to reaching consensus and lowering the temperature of the partisanship. I'm optimistic about your nomination as an outside the Beltway candidate and as a no-nonsense litigator. How do you feel your background will prepare you to work effectively with your fellow commissioners?
Thank you, Chairman, for that question. Pardon me. Thank you, Chairman, for that question. My background, I think, prepares me for exactly that type of scenario. I have never stood out on behalf of a client or in court with just myself. It's always been part of a team. Everybody brings something to the table. Everybody has a perspective. It needs to be heard. The most effective people in any situation are those who listen first and talk second. I believe that what I've learned in my years of experience as a, I'll use your terms, no-nonsense litigator, is to zero in and get rid of the nonsense, because our goals here are all the same. And while the process may differ, depending upon your points of view, at the end of the day, our goal here is to protect the American people, and that cannot be. It shouldn't be, and it doesn't even make sense to be partisan.
Thank you. Dr. Jacobs, there have been many discussions of which you've been a part within the weather community about how to improve the weather enterprise so that the National Weather Service, academia, and the private sector better coordinate among themselves. These discussions can often leave out the most important stakeholder, and that's the American people, who rely on the National Weather Service's forecasts. Our weather legislation, which you mentioned, the Weather Research and Forecasting Innovation Act of 2017, which became law earlier this year, recognized the essential role of the National Weather Service in protecting life and property by codifying the role of warning coordination meteorologists. In the private sector, you did not have the mission obligation to protect life and property. But if confirmed, ensuring the protection of life and property has got to be a top priority. So the question is, would you commit to making the protection of life and property a top priority and ensuring that warning coordination meteorologists receive the support that they need to do their jobs?
Absolutely.
If confirmed, how would you ensure that as NOAA increases its collaboration with the private sector, the priority focus remains on providing forecasts to the American people rather than enhancing the weather enterprise for its own sake?
Well, the quality and reliability thresholds for both on-time delivery of critical forecast as well as accuracy and air timeliness of observing system data would be set by NOAA. So they would be setting the thresholds for the standards that the private sector would have to adhere to through public-private partnerships.
Okay. Well, we hope that you will keep a clear-eyed focus on, as I mentioned earlier, the important priority, and that, of course, is the American people, and that was what we were trying to get at with the legislation, and we hope that as you enter into this important role, that that'll be something that's front and center in your mind as well. Senator Nelson, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to enter into the record an op-ed written by Congressman Bridenstine.
Without objection. So honored.
Congressman, in this op-ed, and I want you to have an opportunity to square some of the things that you've said and written. In this op-ed, you attack Senator Marco Rubio, saying he's made deals with Democrats at great cost to our national security, end of quote. And you say he supported, quote, massive amnesty while failing to secure the border, end of quote. And you say about Senator Rubio, quote, when the pressure mounts, he has been quick to abandon conservative principles and slow to keep his promises to voters, end of quote. Then you did a television video, and you said, quote, Marco Rubio's amnesty bill would have made this country less safe. In another ad, you said Senator Rubio joined forces with President Obama to, quote, provide amnesty without border security. Tell the committee, why did you say these things?
Sir, I have been involved in politics for four and a half years in the House of Representatives, and I've been involved in a number of very difficult issues and represented my constituents the best I absolutely could. And I would say, sir, that it is very different representing the 1st District of Oklahoma from being a NASA administrator. And that particular issue I don't see as being something that would be necessarily relevant to the position of NASA administrator should I be confirmed.
So saying things that the recipient of those remarks, Senator Rubio, says are not true, you're saying that that's just not relevant to you being considered as NASA administrator?
Sir, that was a debate that was had, I think, in 2014, and it was an important debate that we had as a country, and we are past it now. And, sir, it would be my highest ambition to lead NASA in a way that that's not an issue.
Well, I think it's a question of how would you lead NASA? All right, let me give you another example. Is it true, as I had said in my opening remarks, that you endorsed Kelly Ward in her primary challenge last year to John McCain? Is that true?
That is true. A friend of mine in the National Guard who I guess knew her asked for that support, and I did support her with a campaign contribution. I have not met her.
Well, interestingly, you did that, and prior to you endorsing her, let me tell you what she said of John McCain. She said, quote, John McCain is directly responsible for the rise of ISIS. She also said, again before you endorsed her, that Hillary Clinton and John McCain's quote, reckless policies and fuzzy utopian ideals have destabilized the Middle East and triggered a massive refugee crisis, which they want to import into the U.S. to fatten up the welfare rolls, end of quote. That's what she said about John McCain. So you say that you endorsed her even after she had said all those things, by virtue of someone asking you to endorse her?
Sir, I did not know that. I don't live in Arizona, and I'm unaware of those comments.
A NASA administrator has to be responsible for the comments that they make. I suppose then that you would testify here that you're not aware that after Senator McCain defeated Kelly Ward last year, she has now gone on to challenge Senator Flake in this primary before Senator Flake decided to step down. And then when it was announced that Senator McCain had a brain tumor, a cancerous brain tumor, the same lady Kelly Ward, said in a radio interview that she hopes McCain's family and advisors will advise him to step away as quickly as possible. And later in the interview, she said she hopes that if Senator McCain steps down, the Arizona governor would consider appointing her to his seat. You've both, as you've said, donated and received money. Well, you haven't said this. On the Senate Conservatives Fund, you said you have been a member of the Senate Conservatives Fund. You've donated and received money to them. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Are you?
I don't know about being a membership. I don't know of a membership, sir, but they have donated, and I have contributed to their efforts as well.
Are you aware that that conservative fund seeks to unseat Republican senators, including the Senate Majority Leader?
I have not been tracking that, sir.
Well, you've participated in it, and again, I wonder, does NASA need someone that has been so involved in politics in these kind of causes? You can say that politics is politics, which you have stated earlier, but these are some of the most divisive tactics that this senator has ever seen in either party. And this is just you attacking people in your own party. So how do you move past all of that and keep NASA from being dragged down into a divisive political background?
Thank you for that question. Sir, the advocacy I've had for the constituents of Oklahoma is the same advocacy I would like to bring to NASA. Advocating for that agency, I think, is important, especially as we're going through another budget iteration. NASA is a critical piece of the United States of America. And when you think about all of the contributions to space that NASA has contributed to, the way we navigate, the way we communicate, the way we produce food and energy. Earlier, I heard Dr. Jacobs talk about the Weather Research and Forecasting Innovation Act. That is a piece of legislation, sir, that I was the author of in the House of Representatives back in 2013, 2014. And because of the efforts that I made at that time, with the support of Representative Suzanne Bonamici from Oregon, a Democrat, we were able to get that bill past the finish line in the House. And, sir, I'd like to thank you for your support, because without you, it would not have passed the Senate, and, of course, Chairman Thune as well. So I do have a history of working with both sides of the aisle on important issues for our country. One of the thoughts that Chairman Thune had is, as we think about the space architecture and weather forecasting, how do we make sure that we're doing it not just to benefit industry, but to make sure we're getting the right information for our constituents? Sir, as somebody who has worked very hard on behalf of my constituents to move us to a day where we have 0 deaths from tornadoes, that bill, the Weather Research and Forecasting Innovation Act, very important to me, and a piece of it was determining how do we get the best global initial conditions for weather forecasting. And a lot of that is done through technologies by currently, Suomi NPP and the cosmic constellation, but also now we're looking at an era where it could be, in essence, commercialized with GPS radio occultation technology that is being launched. And I was the author of a pilot program to get commercial data to feed the very numerical weather models that he was talking about. So, sir, I would say that when it comes to space issues and when it comes to issues that are important for the national security of this country, I have worked across the aisle with great Americans to bring about, I think, legislation that will ultimately serve every American. It's also true that as a member of the House of Representatives representing Oklahoma, I have advocated for issues that are not relevant to NASA, and that's a part of my background. I do believe, sir, that ultimately that could serve me quite well, not because of what side of the aisle I'm on, but because I do believe the NASA administrator, should I be confirmed, will need to work with Congress daily. And it is my highest ambition, sir, and I mean this sincerely, to work directly with you to make sure that we are building that consensus agenda. We need a consensus agenda because what I want to do, should I be confirmed, is make sure that NASA is following through on the great work you have done on the NASA Transition Authorization Act and appropriations for NASA in the last administration, carry it through this administration, and leave behind a legacy that the next administration, regardless of political party, can follow up on. And working with you, sir, that absolutely is my highest ambition, and I want to make sure that NASA remains, as you said, apolitical. And I will do that to the utmost of my ability should I be confirmed.
Mr. Chairman, I've finished these questions, and I just want to say that obviously this is uncomfortable. Obviously this is not fun, but it is my responsibility as the ranking member to bring out the kind of relationships and acts and words that the nominee is before us for the consideration of the committee. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Nelson. And I've got a couple of items to enter in the record too. Congressman Bridenstine does have letters of support from 54 prominent individuals and space-related organizations, including Democratic Congressman Earl Perlmutter, former NASA Administrator Sean O'Keefe, astronaut Buzz Aldrin, and many others. And so I'll enter those into the record without objection. And then also have 4 letters of support for the nomination of Dr. Neil Jacobs, including a letter of support from Dr. Elizabeth Weatherhead, a senior scientist at the University of Colorado. So I will enter those without objection, and Senator Schatz is up next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to all of you for your willingness to serve. Congressman Bridenstine, I want to read to you a short statement, and you can let me know if you agree or disagree. Climate warming trends over the past century are extremely likely due to human activities.
Yes.
I want to read to you a short statement. I want to see whether you agree with it. Global warming theories should not drive national energy policy without clear evidence.
So I do believe, and I don't know what the context
This
of
is
that
you, just so you know.
Sure. So I'll tell you what I believe. I believe carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas. I believe that humans have contributed to carbon dioxide in the atmosphere.
To what extent?
That is a question I do not have an answer to, but I do know that humans have absolutely contributed to global warming.
Just because I only have 5 minutes here, I want to just be clear about what happens now. Testifiers have been essentially given permission to say climate change is real, carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas, and then they get into, it's really impossible to decipher how much of these are natural and cyclical and how much of this is man-caused. But only in the halls of Congress is this a live debate. And what concerns me the most, in addition to everything that Senator Nelson said, is that this is a science agency. And I get that you don't have a scientific background, and I don't begrudge you that, although it is true that previous administrators had extraordinary scientific backgrounds. But I don't begrudge you that because I don't have a scientific background. But you know what I do is I defer to scientists. I rely on the scientific consensus. And the scientific consensus is not that it's really difficult to tell how much of climate change is attributable to human activity. The scientific consensus is that climate change is primarily caused by human activity. Do you agree with the scientific consensus?
If that's the scientific consensus, that it's primarily driven by human activity, what I will tell you is that
you don't know that that's the scientific consensus?
Sir, I would say human activity absolutely is a contributor to the climate change that we are currently seeing.
What is the scientific consensus about climate change?
I think right now we're just scratching the surface as to the entire system of the Earth. And one of the great missions of NASA is the Earth Science Division of the Science Mission Directorate. And with your help and support, we want to make sure that we're getting the absolute best science.
Right.
NASA is the only agency in the world that can do this kind of science, and really the best agency in the world. And we need to make sure that we're understanding it better every day.
I just want to get clear. Are you disagreeing with the scientific consensus, or are you saying you don't know what the scientific consensus is? Or are you saying that the scientific consensus doesn't exist yet? Which is it?
I believe that the scientific consensus is that humans are contributing and have contributed to the climate change that we have seen.
Are they the primary cause?
Well, it's going to depend on a whole lot of factors, and we're still learning more about that every day.
Okay, I want to
In some years, you could say absolutely. In other years, during sun cycles and other things, there are other contributing factors that would have maybe more of an impact.
Okay, I got my answer. Thank you. To NASA's main 3 goals under the statute, Earth science, space exploration, and aeronautical research. As you know, on April 14th, 2016, you introduced legislation, your American Space Renaissance Act. Actually had some pretty good things in it, but one of the things in it is that you eliminated one of the 3 statutory goals, Earth science. Why?
That was not what I did in the bill. Some have construed that to be the case, but it is absolutely not the case. And in fact, there are provisions in there to help us get even better Earth science. That provision I think you're talking about is...
Where you struck the goal?
No, in fact, I said in there, there's another line that specifically says that we absolutely must get the best science that NASA can get, and that line is in there as well. And so what I would say is, at the time when I was drafting that bill, the objective was to basically create a pioneering doctrine for NASA for deep space. And ultimately, that was what I was working on in that bill. We did not address in that bill aeronautics in any way. We did not address Earth science in that bill, although we did talk about the importance of NASA acquiring science. So that was not my intent, if that was the way it was read.
Well, it's not just the way it was read, it's the way it reads. Here's the line: the expansion of human knowledge of the Earth and the phenomena in the atmosphere and space. That's the Earth science statutory goal for NASA, and that line was struck. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Schott. Senator Udall.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and the ranking member for holding this hearing. I think a very important hearing with important nominees here. During our meeting, and this question is to Congressman Bridenstine, during our meeting you discussed the importance of scientific research being free from political interference and the need for the NASA administrator to allow scientists to pursue research that may run counter to the administration's views on climate change. Scientific integrity is embedded in the rules and requirements that govern NASA's professional behavior across all technical disciplines and should be a high priority for the agency. While we had a constructive dialogue about the need for scientists to be unencumbered by politics, I'm nonetheless concerned with some of your previous statements, and I think they've been examined already, previous statements on climate change. And I'm asking you here, I think these can be pretty simple yes or no answers. Will you commit to ensure that the research and science-based activities by NASA employees are protected from political interference, including science related to climate change?
Yes, sir.
And will you commit to maintaining a culture at the agency that does not compromise the integrity of rigorously researched or tested scientific findings?
Yes, sir.
Thank you for that commitment. And how will you ensure that NASA's agency scientists maintain the highest standards of scientific integrity?
Thank you, sir, for that question. When we think about the various Science Mission Directorate divisions, each one of them is guided by a decadal survey that comes from the National Academy of Sciences. That decadal survey ultimately is what enables us to prevent the science from becoming partisan. It prevents it from becoming impassioned. It keeps it, in my estimation, it keeps it consensus-driven. That's the objective. And when we follow the guidance of those decadal surveys, whether it's the Earth Science Division, the Planetary Science Division, heliophysics, or astrophysics, it is incumbent upon us as leaders, you and me both, to follow this guidance of the decadal survey. And when it comes to Earth science in particular, sir, and this is important to me, I'm a guy from Oklahoma, and I have constituents every year that die in tornadoes. The challenge we have with it's not a challenge with the decadals. My point is we need to follow the decadals. The decadal survey from 2007 came up with a number of objectives that we needed to accomplish. Number one, we needed to understand the composition of the atmosphere. Number two, and this is important to the guy from Oklahoma, we have to better understand weather. Number three, we have to understand the climate. We also need to follow the carbon cycle and how it affects ecosystems. We also need to understand the water cycle, and finally, the surface and subsurface of the Earth. Now, from that decadal survey of 2007, NASA has created an architecture of satellites. I'm thinking about a system of systems that is a constellation of satellites, ultimately, that feed the data so that we as policymakers can make good decisions. When I say we, I mean all of us. And by following those decadal surveys, that's how we keep it so that the previous administration followed it, the next administration follows it, the next administration, and that would be my objective.
And you're going to follow it.
Yes,
now,
sir.
I'm going to just ask the same question that Senator Schatz asked in a little different way. I've summarized here what I think the scientists are saying about climate change, and I want to see if you agree or disagree. 97% of the scientists with articles in peer-reviewed journals have concluded that climate change is real, is caused by human activity, and is already causing devastating problems in our country and around the world. Do you agree or disagree?
I agree with that.
Yeah. And how would you address the arguments of outside entities and those serving in the current administration who refute NASA's scientific research on climate change?
So I think, sir, what we have to do is make sure as leaders that we keep the debate dispassionate, that it is driven by the science. And should I be confirmed as the NASA administrator, it would be my highest ambition that science would drive the direction of NASA and its science mission, the Science Mission Directorate.
Yeah, and my question, see, is you're working in an administration, you have a lot of people who disagree with what you just agreed climate change is all about, and if they come to you to try to influence the scientists within your agency, what are you going to do?
I would tell them the same thing that I'm going to tell you right now, that carbon dioxide is in fact a greenhouse gas. And because of that greenhouse gas, there's more water vapor in the atmosphere than we have ever seen in the past. And that water vapor ultimately has to release its energy. And it does so through cloud formation and rain, and we're seeing precipitation effects from it. And all that is very real and happening. I'm happy to say that to you. I'm happy to say that to anybody else because it's the truth.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Udall. Senator Lee.
Thank you, Congressman Bridenstine. It's good to have you here, and it's great to have your family here as well.
Thank you.
I want to begin by noting that there was a discussion a moment ago about climate change and whether or not you regard climate change as being primarily caused by human activity. It's my understanding that it's not even the position of NASA at this point, that there is a consensus on that point. And so I think it was entirely appropriate for you to defer and acknowledge your viewpoint that it is an issue, it is a factor, but defer to answer the question as to whether or not it is the primary driver of it. I'd like to address some of the comments that have been made with regard to your nomination and your qualifications. The ranking Democrat on the committee has suggested that you're somehow unqualified to serve as the administrator of NASA because you've taken a number of positions that he deems controversial. If that were the standard, then anyone who has served in public life, certainly anyone who has served in the United States Senate or House of Representatives, could arguably be disqualified. Among those things that the ranking Democrat on the committee has raised are the fact that you cut a television ad or series thereof in a presidential campaign, one in which there were several other Republicans running and one in which you endorsed one particular Republican, one in which you criticized positions taken by a sitting incumbent Republican senator who was at the time himself running for President of the United States. I consider wildly inappropriate this suggestion that this somehow disqualifies you. And with all due respect to my colleague, I cannot for the life of me understand why that would be something that would disqualify you. We have had other presidential candidates run from the United States Senate in the past. We've had other members of the Senate criticize them. Senator Nelson himself was heavily involved in the Hillary Clinton for President campaign. And at that same time, Hillary Clinton, as a presidential candidate, was criticizing Bernie Sanders, a member of the United States Senate from the same party. She criticized him quite aggressively. And yet I don't think Senator Nelson would have suggested that Hillary Clinton was unfit to be president as a result of the fact that she criticized a member of the United States Senate from her own party. Nor do I think it would be appropriate for us, if the tables were turned and we were considering Senator Nelson to head NASA, for us to raise the fact that he had supported Senator Clinton in her bid for the presidency, even though Senator Clinton attacked Senator Sanders. As to your support for the Senate Conservatives Fund, your criticism of other Republican officials on a variety of issues, I think it's important to point out here that these are the words of a brave person who doesn't simply follow the flow. These are the words of someone who came to Washington to make a difference and to not simply do whatever everybody else told him to do. The fact that he's been willing to stand out is a reason I support this nominee, not a reason anyone should consider doubting his qualifications for that office. As to your suggestion that there is often bipartisan collusion in Congress, I could not agree more. In fact, much of what masquerades as compromise in this town is in fact collusion, and there is a difference. Compromise occurs when two or more people get together and come to a mutually agreeable solution that inures to everyone's benefit. Collusion is what happens when two or more people get together and come up with something that's good for them, that makes them look good or feel good at the moment, but harms many, many others. And I applaud you, sir, for willing to call out collusion for what it is. You've also been criticized for your refusal to vote for the so-called Gang of Eight amnesty bill in 2013. And yet, this, too, is an indication of the fact that you're willing to be a free thinker. Not everyone has to share your view. And how on earth your position on matters of immigration policy could relate to or have any significant negative bearing on your ability to head NASA is beyond my ability to understand. Finally, we have the fact that your contribution to and support of a particular United States Senate candidate should somehow tie you to anything and everything that that Senate candidate had ever previously said or might subsequently say. I simply don't know what to do with this accusation. This is wildly inappropriate, and I respectfully suggest that, that my colleague withdraw that as a criticism, because it is not one. I want to make very clear to my colleagues, Jim Bridenstine is one of the most heroic people I've ever known. He is a military leader. He is someone who has bravely fought and worked to defend and protect our country in a way that very few others I've ever known have done. He is exactly the kind of person you would want in your neighborhood. He is a scoutmaster and an Eagle Scout. He's trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, and reverent. I cannot imagine a better person to head this or any other agency. Thank you. I see my time's expired.
Thank you, Senator Lee. Senator Wicker.
Well, I was going to ask Mr. Bridenstine about issues such as the Stennis Space Center. So I guess I'll ask you to do that on the record, Mr. Bridenstine, and the future of rocket propulsion and the in-kind contributions that we make there, and also the Space Launch System and the Orion system. So I guess I'll just ask you to comment on the record about that. I appreciate Senator Lee engaging on this issue, and let me just say, this is what I believe about climate change, and I won't even ask you if you agree with it, Mr. Bridenstine. Climate change has been occurring for millions and millions of years, and anyone who disputes that is simply not looking at the evidence. And only in the last few decades has it been suggested that it is human activity that is causing climate change. Now, you've acknowledged that human activity may be contributing to climate change, but there have been wild swings in the climate for millions of years, and only recently have we had the audacity to think that we are so important, that we are causing that climate change, and some other reason has just vanished from the universe. Let me say this about scientific consensus. It hasn't always been right. So now scientific consensus is unassailable. As a matter of fact, Galileo challenged scientific consensus. Copernicus challenged scientific consensus at their peril, and it turns out they were right, but they were alone for a while. Here is where there's not scientific consensus. If we do everything the left has advocated with regard to climate, combating climate change, if we outlaw coal, and if we make people cold in their homes and raise their power bills 300%, what will the effect be? Will sea level be any different at the end of 100 years? We do everything the left has advocated, and there is a scientific difference. There is a scientific debate about whether that will actually occur. I think, and Senator Udall is my good friend, I think your answer, Mr. Bridenstine, to Senator Udall's question is the operative matter. Will you make sure that politics and your own personal philosophy is not injected into the scientific work being done by NASA, and you have solemnly assured this committee that you will see that politics is not inserted? And to me, we can continue to have this debate, and Senator Udall and I have had it all over the country and all over the world, and we'll continue to on a friendly basis. But you have said, and I'm satisfied with that answer, that politics will not be part of the scientific decisions in NAFTA. So thank you, and I'll ask you to reiterate on the record your great support for the Stennis Space Center and the fact that it is a vital part going forward in the mission of NASA. I yield back.
Thank you, Senator Wicker. I think we all assume that's just a given in that.
I will await his answer.
Okay. Next up is Senator Peters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to all of you for your willingness to serve the public in these positions. We appreciate all of you being here today. Congressman Bridenstine, you've had a few questions here today. You seem to be getting all of the action, and I'm going to join in and ask you some questions as well. One statement that you made, in fact, a proposal that I think you put forward, was to advocate removing the NASA administrator from the presidential political cycle, proposing a 5-year term instead of what's currently the case, where the administrator comes in with the president and leaves with the president. And I believe your motivation was to try to depoliticize this position. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
So basically, we should depoliticize the administrator of NASA. You would agree with that?
I think that the NASA administrator should not be driven by political influence. I would say.
Well, I appreciate that. So I guess the question is, you would agree that we need to depoliticize it, but would you also agree with the statement that actually appointing an actual politician who has been actively in the political process, who has taken some pretty active political positions, reference Senator Lee, I do think it is appropriate to be looking at political positions when you have said yourself we should depoliticize this office. It is what we have always done with NASA. The folks who have been NASA administrators have been scientists, they've been astronauts, they've been folks with incredible credentials in the scientific community that have that gravitas to do it, so that we don't get into this give and take and back and forth of politics. Is it How do you reconcile that with an appointment of a politician who has been as active as you have, and you're right to have your positions? I take those positions as well. We both have our positions, that's fine. But that's different than what this position has always had in the past.
Sir, I would say that serving in a political capacity does not disqualify somebody from serving as the NASA administrator. I would say in some cases, while NASA should not be driven by politics, we have seen people from the political arena do very well at NASA. One of the people that I think most recognize as maybe the best NASA administrator ever would be James Webb, who led the effort to get to the moon in the 1960s. Of course, he served as a staffer in the Senate, and then at OMB. At the time, it was the Bureau of the Budget, and then he spent a time at Treasury as well. He spent 5 years in my home state of Oklahoma. We're very proud of him, but he certainly did great work on behalf of this country, coming from a political environment, and I think he did it honorably, without politicizing or making it partisan, and that would be my model. I want to be clear, I am not comparing myself to James Webb, but I will say that I think it can be done, and I don't think that service in Congress is disqualifying.
Well, again, we have been able to avoid that kind of debate because of the folks in recent years that we have put into this position, and I think part of the reason why NASA is without question, and you've mentioned it yourself, one of the preeminent scientific organizations in the world. And that integrity, that reputation is so important for, I think, for the future of this country, that we want to make sure that it is depoliticized, which gives me some pause when we appoint a politician to this position. But it's also a position where you have to manage a very large budget. And this is a very complex budget. NASA has a $19.5 billion budget with many, many employees. From looking at your background, you haven't had that kind of management experience. I think there are more offices at NASA than there are folks in your congressional office, for example. I also wanted to just get your reaction in reviewing some of the circumstances surrounding your tenure as executive director of the Tulsa Air and Space Museum. At the museum, you had 4 employees, which is much different than the 18,000 employees and 80,000 contractors that you oversee if confirmed as the NASA administrator. And at the museum, and this is the information that I have, and I'd love to have your comments. At the museum, you started your term as the executive director with $70,000 annual spending surplus in the bank. You left a short 21 months later with more than a $300,000 annual deficit. That always, as a guy who spent a lot of time in private business and managing budgets, that's a concerning trend from a $70,000 surplus to a $300,000 deficit. What's more, I know we have a quote here from a board member of the museum that has recounted your tenure as the time, and I said, quote, and I quote the member numbers were down, employee and volunteer morale was very low, and the finances and certainly the financial reporting were arguably the worst that they have been in recent years. This was a board member that served. Could you please tell me a little bit about your time at the Tulsa Air and Space Museum and how that prepares you for this job?
Well, sir, I enjoyed my time very much at the Tulsa Air and Space Museum as its executive director. The comments that you're referring to were from a very hotly contested political campaign in 2012. And those accusations were widely refuted by the board of directors, which was at the time not going to get involved in the campaign, but when these accusations came out, they did get involved. Their attorney got involved and wrote these statements. I can provide this for the record, Mr. Chairman, if you'd like.
If those were part of the campaign, I'll take that for what that's worth. I appreciate that. Please explain how you started with a $70,000 annual operating surplus and ended with $300,000 in debt.
It's not true.
Those are not accurate numbers?
That is not true. What that was from in the campaign, there was I'm trying to remember, but there was a non-cash loss from the depreciation of capital assets, and from a document based on that, they tried to accuse me of having lost money for the museum, which is absolutely not the case. The museum is in great shape, and in fact, I had my 40th birthday party a couple of years ago at the museum. Senator Ted Cruz actually came to it. Senator Inhofe flew in the air show that we had at the museum. Those accusations are not accurate.
Thank you, Senator Peters. Senator Inhofe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I think some of the things I was going to say have been articulated in a more effective way, I think, by my friend Senator Lee, and I agree with all of his comments. I also would say, you know, it seems like, and I served for many years as chairman of the Environment Public Works Committee, you can't have a hearing anymore without everyone bringing up global warming. I mean, that's the issue that I like to bring up. I have to say this because I don't have a better friend on the other side of the aisle than Senator Udall, but this 97% stuff, that's been debunked completely, and everybody knows that. So I like to listen to when you talk about this consensus. Richard Lindzen from the MIT is one of the most knowledgeable persons in this area. He is a scientist. And he said that in characterizing the problem, he said controlling carbon is a bureaucrat's dream. If you control carbon, you control people. And, you know, and so we can have that debate anytime we want to, and we've had it over and over again. It's interesting, though, the people of America have caught on. I can remember back when they had the polling, it used to be back in about 02 and 03, it was the #1 or #2 issue on the Gallup poll, March poll that they would have. That's dropped down to number 15 now, and so the people have caught on. Let me just, I think there's some things that I'd like to get back, I think are significant, having to do with your pursuit of this position. One, when they talk about the members of Congress, it's easy to, it would be an asset to have, I think, someone who's been a member of Congress. You got to keep in mind, NASA has to come to Congress to get their funding, get their appropriation, get their authorization. And I would think that all of us here, one common thread is we're all very excited about the future of NASA and what we could do. I'm concerned, I want to be ahead of some of these other countries out there that I believe have passed us up in many areas. That's the passion that I have. So I think that, and we talked about James Webb and of course what he did, and I think we all understand that. But I would just say this, I think it's a positive, particularly when you're trying to get the attention of Congress to support NASA, to have been a member of Congress. What do you think?
Well, I think that's accurate, sir. I think one of the benefits that I could bring to the agency is the fact that I have worked in these halls with many members of Congress on both sides of the aisle to accomplish very important strategic objectives for our country. And when you think about what the NASA administrator's role will be in the coming years, working with the National Space Council and working with the Office of Management and Budget and working with the White House, and of course working to build a consensus agenda with members of Congress on both sides, the Senate and the House. I think that my experience has prepared me well to be able to accomplish those things. And certainly it would be a high honor if I were to be confirmed to do that.
Yeah. You know, we both served on, served on the House Armed Services Committee. I've served on and been the ranking member of the Senate Armed Services Committee. And I really believe, and I have heard statements even from you, that looking at the threats that we face today, we're in the most threatened position, I believe, in the history of our country. When we have the other, you look back at the days of the Cold War, two superpowers, we knew what they had, they knew what we had. That's not that way anymore. And so I think that I look at one of the functions of NASA to be concerned with and working on the fact that we have a real threat out there. Do you have any ideas on what you, as an administrator, should you be confirmed, could draw upon your experience as a member of the House Armed Services Committee that would be helpful in combating, working on our national security?
Yes, sir, and not just from my time on the Armed Services Committee, but also as a Navy pilot. I can tell you one of the greatest risks we have in the world today, from an aircraft carrier perspective, is hypersonics. Basically, what we call anti-access aerial denial weapons that can reach our assets far distances and at velocities that are very dangerous. So where NASA plays, and I want to be really clear, NASA is not a military agency. It is an agency that is necessary for the peaceful uses of outer space. But what the research NASA has done can lead to are capabilities that can be used by the Department of Defense. Hypersonics, in my view, sir, is probably the most important right now, and the Aeronautics Research Mission Directorate at NASA is responsible for that. And if I could ask you for anything, sir, it would be that we need to make sure that that's adequately funded. Basic research is what NASA does for its own purposes, but there are national security implications from hypersonics. Yeah. I would also say one of the areas I've had a lot of focus on in the House of Representatives is the challenge we have with space debris. There's a lot of threats in space, but it's not just hostile threats. It's not just co-orbital anti-satellite devices or direct descent anti-satellite missiles. It also includes just debris that was launched in the 1960s. And so what we have to do is we have to create a situational awareness domain to where we can mitigate the effects of that debris. Right now, and this is a big piece for the Armed Services Committee, it's all done by the JSPOC, the Joint Space Operations Center in Vandenberg Air Force Base, and it's done by them, our Air Force. I should say it's a joint command because it's under Strategic Command, so it's joint, but it's predominantly Air Force. And the challenge that we have is that the Air Force is providing space situational awareness to the entire world for absolutely free. And that includes our foreign partners, but also countries that are sometimes not friendly to the United States and all of the commercial assets. And in essence, the Air Force right now is acting as the FAA for space. I want to be clear. The Air Force must continue to do space situational awareness. But as far as providing conjunction analysis and reporting, that should be done by a civilian agency that has international support, primarily because it's not the job of the American taxpayer to protect the assets of countries that are often hostile to the United States.
Yeah, I know my time's expired. Just one comment. There's been a lot of talk about Jim Bridenstine from people who don't really know him very well. I have the distinction of knowing him better than anyone else at this table. And let me just say to my friends on both sides of the aisle, I support him because I believe he's going to be the very best administrator that we will have. I think we'll look back at this time someday. And I would just say to you, if you knew him as I know him, you would be very supportive. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Inhofe. And I know the other three nominees are sitting there today going, wow, these confirmation hearings are a breeze. I had Senator Gardner, but Senator Hassan has returned, and she is up next. Senator Hassan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Ranking Member Nelson, and thank you to the witnesses. Congratulations on your nominations, and thank you to your families as well, because this is a family affair, and we appreciate their willingness to help you serve. I want to start Mr. Bridenstine, with you, please. From our research, it appears that you are a big fan of transparency, and so am I. On numerous occasions, you've called on federal agencies, including the EPA and Health and Human Services, to be more transparent. Yet, in the period leading up to your nomination hearing, you went through your public records and scrubbed them clean of your most controversial statements, interviews, press releases, and other materials that would show this panel and the American public who you are. In total, it appears that at least 575 items were deleted. So please briefly explain for us why these materials were deleted.
I am not certain which materials you might be referring to, but I will tell you this. We have not scrubbed anything from, that was an accusation, but it hasn't happened. What I will tell you is, as a member of Congress, I said that I'm not going to run again, and I said that in fact, I said it the day that I announced for my first race that I was going to serve 3 terms and no more. So all of my campaign material did come down, and that was from many, many, many months ago. I don't know how many months ago.
Well, let me then turn to your committee questionnaire, where you left off several op-eds, political donations, and memberships that you hold. So what happened here? It really does appear to many of us that you are trying to hide information from yourself, about yourself, from the American public. So what happened on your questionnaire?
I don't know what op-eds, we scrubbed everything we could to deliver everything that we had available, and of course, we searched the internet and did other things to try to make sure we delivered everything that the Senate had asked for, and as far as I know, we've done that.
Well, I just want to let you know that it doesn't appear to some of us that you have, and you are asking the American people to trust you with the operation of NASA in a transparent way that complies with all existing government's ethics rules. How can we trust you to do that?
If there are any op-eds or public statements that I did not deliver, certainly I'd like to know what those are so that I can deliver them, but it sounds like you might already have them. So
Well, it's my understanding we have them, but not because you shared them with us. So let me move on to another question. As you know, there have been troubling reports and allegations about widespread sexual assault and sexual harassment. This issue particularly plagues the scientific community as well. In fact, a 2017 study published in the Journal of Geophysical Research found that 54% of female scientists surveyed were subject to sexual remarks and harassment. 18% of women of color and 12% of white women skipped professional events because they did not feel safe attending, identifying a significant loss of career opportunities due to a hostile environment. Last year, you defended Donald Trump's remarks in the leaked Access Hollywood tape about assaulting women. You also voted against the Violence Against Women Act in the past, while stating that this bill and its programs misallocate, quote, scarce federal resources. That really concerns me. As NASA's leader, you will set an example for the entire agency and the larger scientific community. You'll manage thousands of employees. So do you stand by your assessment, and I'm quoting from the Access Hollywood tapes here, that grabbing women or talking about doing so is defensible?
I don't think that's defensible.
And what steps will you take to better address sexual harassment issues in the scientific community and ensure that your employees feel safe?
Well, thank you for that question. It's a big deal across the government at whole. It's a big deal in the House of Representatives. I'm sure it's a big deal in the Senate. I currently serve in the Oklahoma Air National Guard. We get training on this regularly as well. I think the number one thing that a NASA administrator could do in relation to that is make sure that everybody is educated and aware as to what is sexual harassment and to not even get close to it, and let everybody know that there will be zero tolerance for that.
So because I'm just about out of time, I just want to, I appreciate that answer, but I do have to say to you that when you make statements defending somebody who has bragged about harassing and assaulting women, that it does not give people, particularly women, confidence that you are going to protect them, stand up for a fair and equal workplace. And it's good that you said that you don't defend those comments here today, but that isn't what you said at the height of the campaign. And we do need to have leaders who are consistent and don't change their positions from time to time. So I'm concerned about your record in that regard. I thank you, Mr. Chair. I see I'm over. I will submit my questions for Dr. Jacobs for the record.
Thank you, Senator Hassan. Senator Cortez Masto.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you all for your willingness to serve. Welcome to your family members. I appreciate that. Let me just start with you, Congressman Bridenstine, and thank you so much for taking the time to visit with me. I appreciate that.
Yes, ma'am.
And I think my colleague may have touched on this, comments that you've made regarding the LGBTQ community. And I just have a question, and can you just follow up for me? How is it that NASA employees who are LGBTQ or have children in gay marriages, how should they feel about your leadership when you've taken these positions?
Thank you for that question, ma'am. And what I would share with you is that I do believe from my heart that every human being has dignity and worth, and that each person needs to be treated as though they are a valued member of the team. And certainly, equal opportunity would be my highest objective as the leader of NASA. And when it comes to standards, they need to be uniform, and people need to know what those standards are and be held to it in a uniform way. and that's how I would conduct myself. The Defense of Marriage Act has been overturned by the Supreme Court. The law is now different, and I will absolutely follow the law should I be confirmed, ma'am.
Thank you. And I think we talked a little bit about this when we met. I'm a lead sponsor on the Safe Drone Act, which among other things requires the FAA to develop an implementation plan to achieve full operational capabilities of unmanned aircraft systems, traffic management, and ensure the safety and security of all aircraft. The plan must include a timeline, certification criterion, establish industry and government roles, and include an assessment of various necessary components. NASA is taking a joint lead in UAS traffic management system. Can you commit to continued progress and timely pursuit of UAS air traffic management technologies, which include utilizing the important UAS test site like the one in Nevada?
Without question. And in fact, I've been to Stead Field, the Reno Air Races. I used to be stationed at Naval Air Station Fallon, Nevada. I flew there at the Naval Strike and Air Warfare Center. I can tell you that the UAS, enabling UAS to integrate into the national airspace system is absolutely a critical part of America's not only national security but economic development. We have to be better at that than anybody else in the world, and I am absolutely committed to that. NASA is a technology provider for that, which a lot of that technology is being developed and tested at Stead Field. And you have my commitment that I will absolutely, that will be a high priority for me for the interest of our country, not just for NASA, but for the economy.
Okay, thank you. And then is it Biaco? I don't want to.
Biaco.
Biaco, thank you very much. I know the CPSC is focused on many things that create more of an immediate physical risk of serious injury or death, like cribs and power tools. But in your statement, you mentioned technology and new products. Do you think we are prepared on the consumer protection side of the Internet of Things? And what can we do and what can you do in your role to really address that new technology and what it means for consumer safety as well as when we're talking about the Internet of Things?
Thank you, Senator, for that question. I don't know if we're prepared for those things. I think that type of the Internet of Things and the products that are coming onto the market every day, I have a teenage daughter, I don't know anything about them. And it seems like every time you look at a product on the market, it's new, it's faster, it's doing things that we don't understand in a day-to-day basis. So I think that we are going to have to, as an agency, make sure that we are working with staff to make sure that they are getting ahead of the curve, understanding these products, how they work and how they interact with each other. I think those are things that we haven't looked at close enough as a society, but as far as the agency goes, and of course I'm not inside yet, so I can't comment on what they may or may not have done. But I think one of the things that, if confirmed, once I get there, I think that is something that we need to move a little quickly on.
Thank you. I appreciate that because we're in the technological age, and I think everything we do when it comes to consumer safety is an important component or guide rail when it comes to embracing this new technology as well. So I appreciate your comments. I know my time is almost up. I will submit the rest of my questions for the record. Again, thank you all for your willingness to serve. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Cortez Masto. Senator Moran.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. Let me address my comments or questions to Ms. Biaco. But first, let me thank all of the potential, let me say the nominees for their willingness to serve if confirmed. I appreciate your interest in public service and want to see that we have highly qualified, motivated individuals to fill the jobs that you are willing to assume. So I wish you well. Ms. Biaco, thank you for our conversation recently. In your testimony, you mentioned the important issue of recall effectiveness. I chair the subcommittee on consumer protection of this committee. We all believe that the Commission has an important role in spotting emerging hazards and removing dangerous products from the marketplace, and to do so as quickly as possible. I chaired a hearing on the effectiveness of voluntary recalls with panels from both CPSC and industry stakeholders in the last Congress. I think the message that we largely received during that hearing was that the Commission needed to strengthen its efforts to engage and communicate with stakeholders to improve the speed and efficacy of recalls. I wanted to give you a moment to speak as to the importance of voluntary recalls in particular, but voluntary versus mandatory. The Commission has the opportunity to do both, and how important it is, in your view, for the agency to have engagement with stakeholders when it comes to improving the value of those recalls.
Thank you, Senator, for asking me that, and I also enjoyed our conversation yesterday. As far as voluntary recalls go, I think that is one of the most effective programs that the CPSC has. In my experience in private practice, I have come across situations where companies have said, look, we've identified something here, and so let's let the consumers know. Reaching the consumers and having a program where they can reach the consumers without having to go through a whole series of regulations and hoops and so forth is very important to get that message out there to the people, and it's what the goal of the CPSC is to begin with. Secondly, I think that we still don't have a complete handle on why consumers, when they learn of a recall or they learn of a product flaw, if you will, don't take advantage of it. And so I think that we have so many ways to communicate. I mean, we're all on our phones and doing a ton of things, but what is it that we're missing, that we're not reaching consumers and getting them to respond? So I think those are all important things that we have to study. There's got to be more information out there that we can be more effective. As far as working with the CPSC and making it move in a quicker manner, not getting bogged down, for example, in the details of the written message sometimes could benefit the speed of which a voluntary recall gets out on the market. That would be something that comes to mind. But I think that program is very valuable. I would certainly encourage the continuation of that program. I would like to see the CPSC work with stakeholders in that regard and make sure that we focus on how to even make it stronger.
Do you have the understanding that statutorily it is the initial responsibility of let me say that the initial effort at a recall should be voluntary as compared to mandatory at the CPSC? Is that the preferred way?
Well, I believe it's the preferred way. It's also, there's a complicated statutory framework that directs the CPSC to follow, and when, in the very beginning, we're supposed to work with stakeholders to make sure that we can come to a voluntary consensus to make products safer or to get the message out there, and it's only when those voluntary situations fail that the CPSC should engage in some type of mandatory rulemaking. But that brings us full circle back to the effectiveness and the speed of things, because that does take time.
Let me change the topic just a bit. It's often been said, I've heard commissioners say that the CPSC is a data-driven agency. In my experience, I've seen instances, at least in my view, where that is seemingly avoided or underdeveloped in rulemakings, with the goal of at least seeming to me that in the rulemaking process, the data didn't fit the desired outcome, and therefore the data became less important. Would you speak as to your willingness to let data drive your decisions?
The data must drive the decision, Senator. In any type of, when you're dealing with any type of product that has been designed and manufactured, for example, there has to be a concern that there is a product hazard. There has to be some type of data. There has to be data, science, statistics, and a real basis before you engage in some type of decision-making process. You can't jump to the end simply because it seems like this is something that we want to promote, or it happens to be something that perhaps you're getting pressure from outside advocacy groups. You have to understand what you're dealing with. My philosophy always has been to, put the product in my hand, touch it, tear it apart, bring it together, find out what it does, what it can do, and what it can't do. So I'm a big supporter of understanding all of the aspects, particularly the supportable aspects.
Thank you. I look forward to working with you. Chairman, I tried to take your...
Thank you, Senator Moran, for following through on that. I have Senator Markey. I've got 5 people left to ask questions. We have a vote at noon. it's 2 votes, a series of votes, so we might be able to get everybody in if we proceed in a fairly expeditious way. So Senator Markey's up next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, very much. Congressman Bridenstine, in an interview with the Family Research Council in 2013, which has been designated as a hate group by the Southern Poverty Law Center, you said that, quote, people should be tolerant of the fact that I believe that sex is between one man and one woman, between the institution of marriage, and that marriage should be for a lifetime. I think that the idea, that concept, our culture, our nation would be better off if we commended organizations that had that philosophy. Well, NASA has actually officially stated that diversity and inclusion are integral to mission success. And of the 18,000 people who work at NASA, they identify as gay, as lesbian, as transgender, as queer, and they're wondering, you know, with some fear in their heart, what does it mean that you could be confirmed here by the United States Senate? What are the assurances that you're going to give to them, that they don't have to worry for a second?
Sir, I'll give the assurance to you and of course, to them as well. I absolutely believe that every human being has value and every person has worth. And it is my commitment to you and to the Senate and to those employees that they will be treated fairly and equally, that standards will be, everybody will know what the standards are for the work that they do, and they'll be judged according to equal standards, and there will be given equal opportunity. NASA has a history, sir, of attracting the absolute best and the brightest. It has a history of being the best place to work in the United States government, and it would be my highest ambition to make sure that those qualities all remain. And so I would commit that to you, sir.
All right. Well, I think that's important because obviously they would see your earlier comments and they would be worrying about their own personal life, their own ability to be who God created them to be. And I think that's absolutely imperative that we ensure that they understand that they're going to be fully protected. And you guarantee they will be fully protected?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, I want to continue an additional conversation that's important, the subject of climate change. In 2016, you said, quote, I would say the climate is changing. It has always changed. So that's kind of an explicit casting of doubt upon the role of human beings. Now, in response to Senator Schatz's question, you responded that, in your opinion, that humans play some role in the warming of the planet. Here's the problem again for the employees at NASA. These are our top scientists in doing the climate modeling for our country and preparing us for the future and preparing the planet for the future. And I know, because I've been told by scientists, that fear is rampant amongst our government scientists, that they are going to be punished if they speak publicly about their work on climate change science. Will you pledge that you will not in any way punish any NASA climate scientists for speaking publicly about their own views, their own science, in terms of how they view climate science?
Without question.
You will not punish them?
I will not punish them.
Okay. And will you promise that you will not reassign any NASA scientists working on climate change?
Well, they might want to be reassigned if somebody...
No, I'm saying involuntary reassignment by...
If that is deemed as punishment based on what they might have said about climate change, I can commit to you that I'm not going to reassign anybody based on that, because that would be punishment. So yes, sir, I would agree to that.
Okay. And again, I want to assure you that fear is rampant, that people are worried, that they are going to be punished.
Sir,
so that's just a fact of the matter, and the world depends upon, we are
the Supreme Court of Climate Modeling, and these people are the people who we're all relying upon to get these scientific facts correct. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Markey. Senator Blumenthal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Baiocco, I understand that you have signed an agreement with the ethics authorities and agreed to reserve the right to seek a waiver as to companies that you've represented in the past after 1 year. Is that correct?
I have signed an agreement with the Office of the Government Ethics Office that they actually asked me to do that. I did not affirmatively seek that.
Would you agree to recuse yourself for as long as you serve in any matters representing Mattel, Yamaha, or R.J. Reynolds?
Senator, I will follow the agreement that I have signed.
So you will not agree to recuse yourself?
I didn't say that either. I think that before I can make that type of decision, I need to know what it is that is before the commission, whether or not I have any conflict on those issues. I will seek the guidance of the designated ethics officer, and I will follow that guidance.
Let me ask you whether I'm correct in this statement. You represented Mattel involving lead-containing toys, Yamaha for deadly all-terrain vehicles, and R.J. Reynolds. Aren't you of the view that you should recuse yourself in matters involving those companies after representing them in these types of matters? It is a fairly simple thing to do, and one that would remove any taint that will follow you for as long as you're a commissioner if you fail to recuse yourself, and if you fail now to commit yourself to doing so.
And thank you for asking me, Senator, because I think that the public confidence here on this issue is very important. First of all, with regard to R.J. Reynolds, I don't see that being an issue because cigarettes are not within the jurisdiction of the CPSC. With regard to Mattel, I was part of a very large team that worked on Mattel, and it was a very narrow issue that dealt with some experts. So I don't have in my head information that is necessarily information that was before the CPSC. But I do believe that the American public is entitled to have 5 commissioners who actively post and participate, and where there is a situation where I need not recuse, I don't, and I'm told that—
Well, the American people are entitled to commissioners who avoid any perception, as well as reality, of conflict of interest. By the way, R.J. Reynolds is among the tobacco industry representatives that have been instrumental in encouraging the extensive use of flame retardant chemicals in unupholstered furniture to deflect pressure on cigarette makers to make a fire-safe cigarette. Smoldering cigarettes, as you well know, often cause fires and kill people. So R.J. Reynolds is very relevant to the CPSC. R.J. Reynolds also owns companies that make e-cigarettes, and liquid nicotine is very relevant to the CPSC. So I strongly suggest that as a threshold matter, you take the very simple, straightforward step, assuming that you won't be beholden to R.J. Reynolds or Mattel or Yamaha, of recusing yourself and committing to do so in any matters involving it, and thereby removing any potential taint or conflict of interest. Let me ask you about the, Mr. Bridenstine, about a statement that was made to you in a town hall that you hosted in 2014. You're familiar with this statement,
I am.
I'm sure. A member of the audience loudly exclaimed to you that President Obama should be, quote, executed as an enemy combatant. The video is available online, as you know. Your response was, quote, "Look, everybody knows the lawlessness of this president. He picks and chooses which laws he's going to enforce," and then you went on. Do you regret that your failure to disagree with that member of the audience?
If I had to do it again, I would have interrupted immediately. I didn't. At the time, my best judgment was to just let her vent, and she went on for a number of minutes, and then ultimately I focused my comments on the last piece, the last part of what she said, but I would do it differently next time.
So you do regret your decision not to interrupt?
I should have interrupted.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Gardner. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Cruz, thank you very much for this. Thanks to the witnesses for your willingness to serve our country today and to participate in this process. Dr. Jacobs, I would suggest, whether or not people are scientists has been a regular theme this morning. I'm not a scientist, but I would suggest if you're looking to escape hurricanes, Colorado Springs still remains a very good place to escape hurricanes. So thank you for your service and for being here today as a Coloradan as well. Thank you. Congressman Bridenstine, I would ask you, are you or have you ever been a Republican? Are you or have you ever had an opinion different than other Republicans?
Yes.
Are you or have you ever criticized Marco Rubio for his choice in music? Look, this, I think, hearing at times has gone into places where a little bit disgusting throughout this nomination hearing this morning, as well as previous nomination hearings this Congress has held this year. We've had nominees questioned over their Catholic faith. We've had nominees questioned over their Christian faith. In fact, one senator said of a Christian nominee that this nominee is really not someone who is what this country is supposed to be about, because they adhered to their Christian faith. Now, that didn't come up in this hearing this morning. I'm a little surprised it did, though, based on some of the things that I've heard today. Your children are here, your family's here. Thank you to them for their service as well. Thanks to all of you for your service. What I heard Ms. Biacchio say was that if the law requires you to do so, you will do so. If your agreements you've signed require you to do so, you will do so. No doubt about it. You're not going to try to wiggle out of that, try to avoid the law. Is that correct?
That's correct, Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Bridenstine, a couple questions for you on what I had hoped would be the focus of this committee hearing, and that's a little bit of work that we're doing on in Colorado on things like the Orion Project. But before I do that, I actually was reminded of a editorial op-ed that was put in the record by Chairman Thune earlier today, but I'll just read the headline of this op-ed. Bridenstine wins a Democrat's support for NASA's top job. That's the headline of this. Ed Perlmutter, my colleague from Colorado, said, "I served with Bridenstine on the House Science, Space, and Technology Committee. My first real interaction with him occurred a number of years ago when he visited Colorado to meet with scientists." Did you meet with only Republican scientists?
No, sir.
You probably didn't ask them, right?
I have no idea what they're...
Thank you. Thank you. His background as a naval aviator made it easier for him to absorb and understand the concepts being discussed by scientists and engineers. Despite our political differences, different parties, I'm convinced Bridenstine will lead the brilliant scientists, engineers, technicians, and outstanding personnel at NASA, and it embarks on a new era of space exploration and scientific discovery. That wasn't Senator Lee, that wasn't Senator Cruz, that wasn't Donald Trump. That was a Democrat congressman from Colorado who said that, who has your support. You and I had the pleasure of meeting when you got elected to Congress. We served together in the House of Representatives for a couple years, but we also had a chance to meet while you were in the House. I was in the Senate. You came over to my office. You talked about space policy. You didn't come over to my office to talk about space policy from the standpoint of, boy, we can really get rid of Democrat scientists if we do this. You didn't talk about how we can pursue this policy or that policy in a partisan purpose. What you came to my office to talk about was a plan that you had put together for reaching greater distances in space, a plan to embolden the mission of NASA, to actually give an agency that has probably wandered far too long without a mission, some substantive mission to get back to what it's supposed to be doing. That's exploration, that's science. You didn't come at it and try to say, this is how we're going to extinguish scientific research, values, and exploration. You came and you talked about how you're going to expand it and further that reach. Not everybody agreed with your approach, but I commend you for having a vision that unfortunately far too long this administration, the previous administration didn't have, and other administrations didn't have either when it comes to NASA. So I will ask you about Orion, Mr. Bridenstine. Are you able to say today whether you support the Orion project moving forward?
Yes, sir, 100%.
Thank you, Mr. Bridenstine. And I've got a meeting that's in the lobby. They've waited for 10 minutes so that I could let this opportunity occur without, so I don't want to go any further without messing their schedule up. So thank you very much to the nominees for being here. And I'm sorry if I seem a little irritated. It's because I'm just sorry that you've gone through what you've gone through today.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Senator Gardner. Senator Booker.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. There was some discussion as to the factual nature of Senator Peters' questions about the Tulsa Air and Space Museum. I was given the records here for the museum that was the basis for Senator Peters' questions. I was asked to see if I can enter them into the record. I'd like to ask that they be entered into the record. And perhaps just a question for the record, you don't have to answer it now, but could you address these concerns? I didn't know about them before the hearing, and I think that it'd be valuable to hear your discussions. This is a very large budget. As a guy who went from just being a legislator to running a billion-dollar operation, I can write a book about all the mistakes I made in the first year, but learn to be a really good manager. And I think that this is a valid question, a line of questioning, and you should explain this before folks vote. Will you do that for us?
I'd be happy to.
Thank you very much. Senator Lee, who's a friend of mine, claimed that you were clean. I have no evidence to that or not. He said that you were thrifty, but he also said that you were brave, and clearly sitting here through all this questioning, you are brave and putting yourself up, and I appreciate it. And I really want to note to you how much I appreciate your visit with me. You came with humility and just a real earnest sense and desire to serve your country, which I think is valid and very true. Clearly, you are an American that seeks to serve and try to make our nation better. I don't have that much in terms of questioning, and some of it's just repeating, because I thought it was interesting, the questions from two of my colleagues about LGBT issues. And again, I think you're very sincere when you said you're going to follow the letter of the law, and obviously, as a manager, you know that there are laws regarding the treatment and the honor of folks. But I guess what I want to hear from you is coming from a family who stories around the dinner table about how difficult it was to see people in positions of power who did not see and believe in their worth, how hurtful that is. And you're going to be a position not just managing people, but you were one of the more, at least in my eyes, one of the more inspiring, you're up for an office to be one of the more inspiring leaders in the United States of America, where children will look to you. And I'm just wondering, to read things saying that homosexuality is immoral, same-sex couples are ill-suited for raising children. These are comments you've made, correct?
Not that I remember.
Okay, so I have quotes here that I'd like to enter for the record that the nominee has made regarding gays and lesbians, and I think it's important. May I enter them for the record? In what sort of form? Just quotes from various articles and interviews. If you submit the whole article, thank you very much. And so I'm wondering if you're a child and you have quotes. Some of us in America still believe in the concept of sexual morality. Tell me how you think a child will view a leader who thinks that they are immoral or engaging in immoral acts. Can you just tell me how do you think a child will view your leadership, really in terms of their dreams and aspirations to perhaps even one day be an astronaut?
Sir, I'll tell you this. I believe that every person has dignity and worth, and every person has value. The personal views I have on sexual morality are my personal views. As a leader, should I be confirmed to be the NASA administrator, certainly I can tell you NASA is unique in its ability to inspire and educate young folks. And you and I had this conversation in your office.
And forgive me for interrupting you. I'm limited time, and there's a vote that's been called. So if you're a NASA administrator, let's picture you there, and someone asks you questions about sexual morality, you're going to stay consistent with your past statements in how you view same-sex couples raising children and the hundreds of thousands of children in America that are being raised in that way. You're going to stick to your past statements.
Sir, I will tell you this. I believe every person has value and worth, and I absolutely believe that. And I will be committed to making sure that there is equal opportunity and standards will be uniform. And that absolutely is my position, will continue to be my position. I want to see everybody who works at NASA be able to excel based on the merits of their work exclusively.
Well, my time is running out. And I just want to say, you and I are both Christians. We both believe in the radical love of Christ.
Yes, sir.
But I just want you to know that I'm a big believer that before someone tells me about their religion, I want to see it in how they treat other people, how they talk about other people, how they talk about the despised or the hated. Do they visit people in prison? Do they care about those people who are put down in society? And it's coming from one of the cultures in America where you see people sometimes in power and the way they talk about groups, it's very hurtful. And it's very discouraging. And I just want you to know, because I'm not sure whether you'll be confirmed or not, but this is a beautiful country, and I'm glad that you affirm the dignity and the worth of all folks. But it is critically important, should you have the privilege of serving in this position, that is about inspiration. It's about elevating the potential and possibility of all human beings. It is very, very important that you are not seen as someone who stands in judgment of people because of who they are, and that in fact can speak to the aspirations of all folks, whether they are gay, straight, black or white, or what have you. I'm grateful for your willingness to put yourself forward for this, but I'm really hoping, in my opinion, that you can give some more assurances to all those people that you will be responsible for not just managing, but inspiring. Thank you very much.
Senator Duckworth.
Thank you, and I thank my colleague from New Jersey for his very moving remarks. Mr. Bridenstine, NASA is a diverse institution of scientists, engineers, and mathematicians from all backgrounds and walk of life who come together to achieve the agency's very unique mission. And Americans rightfully take pride in NASA's achievements, and NASA's scientific progress is indeed intertwined with the progress of becoming more inclusive and more diverse within NASA itself, not less. It's incumbent on the NASA administrator to foster an environment where our brightest, our very best are valued for their innovative ideas, no matter their gender, race, or sexual orientation. Yet, Mr. Bridenstine, you have appeared on Frank Gaffney's radio show not once, not twice, but 7 times. This is a man who called for one of your House colleagues, Congressman Andre Carson, to be removed from the House Intelligence Committee because of his religious faith. What's your relationship with Mr. Gaffney, and were you aware that his organization has been identified as an extremist by the Anti-Defamation League and as a hate group by the Southern Poverty Law Center?
Ma'am, I am not aware of that. I have seen Frank Gaffney around the House of Representatives. He gets involved in national security issues, and I have gone on his radio program, as you have said.
Okay. So, yes or no, do you believe that Congressman Carson represents a national security risk to the United States because of his religion?
Not at all. I know him, and I think he's a good man.
Okay. Did you dispute Mr. Gaffney's calling for him being removed from the committee because of his religion at any time in the 7 interviews you gave, or in any of the times that you've met him in the halls of Congress?
I did not know that he had ever made those comments. If I did know that, I would have refuted it.
Okay, thank you. In November 2014 and December 2016, you spoke at the Restoration Weekend Conference at the David Horowitz Freedom Center in Palm Beach, Florida, where you praised the work of Mr. Horowitz and the center. So that's twice, 2014 and 2016. Are you aware that the Southern Poverty Law Center has identified David Horowitz Freedom Center as a hate group, and Mr. Horowitz himself as a hate group leader for their anti-immigrant and anti-Muslim far-right rhetoric?
I am not aware of that.
So, okay. It's troubling to me that you would have associations, not casual, but multiple meetings and multiple events, and attend things like 7 radio shows, 2 major events with people that you don't know that they've been identified by multiple groups as being hate groups. That's troubling. There are dedicated NASA employees who are or may be deeply concerned about their futures at the agency, given your history of offensive statements against LGBTQ Americans and seeming comfort with hate groups, or at least willful ignorance is what it sounds like to me now about hate groups. To begin addressing these concerns, yes or no, if confirmed as NASA administrator, would you treat discrimination against a NASA employee on the basis of sexual orientation or gender identity or religion as a prohibited personnel practice?
Discrimination based on that prohibited? Absolutely, it should be prohibited.
So gender identity, sexual orientation, as well as religious affiliation?
Absolutely, yes, ma'am.
Okay. When we met to discuss your nomination, you had not yet read the Rogers Commission report, which was published after the Challenger disaster. And in my opinion, this would be mandatory and basic reading for anyone seeking a management job at NASA, let alone becoming the NASA administrator. So I was quite taken aback that not only did you not know about it, had not read it, you didn't even know about it, and I suggested that you read it before you came today. Have you read the report since our meeting?
Yes, ma'am, I've read it a number of times since our meeting.
Okay.
And I didn't identify it as the name, the Rogers Commission report, but when I read it, I recognized that when I did my MBA at Cornell, I had read it before.
But did remember the lessons from it, which is a great concern for someone who's looking to lead NASA. The report indicates that not only were there technical failures that led to the disaster, but there were also contributing management failures because of political motivations. I hope you will consider, as you said, rereading the report multiple times. Thank you for your service to this nation, both in uniform and in Congress. But I truly do not think you're ready to be the administrator for NASA. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Duckworth. Senator Klobuchar just wants to say something.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just going to put my questions on the record because we had the vote, but I had some questions, Mr. Bridenstine, for you about the work that Senator Capito and Scott and I have done on diversifying tech, and of course that relates to NASA and how important that is. And then we had a good meeting, Ms. Biacco, yesterday, which I appreciated, and I will put some more questions on the record about the various consumer issues that we discussed, including the importance of the pool safety law and the CPSC's continual involvement. And then I'll put the other questions on the record. So I just want to thank you for being before us today. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Klobuchar. And let me just say that if associating with organizations like the Family Research Council disqualifies you from serving any public position, I think every Republican senator and some Democrats senators would be disqualified. Senator Cruz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Congratulations to each of the nominees for your nominations. To the three folks on the right, I congratulate you for the good judgment of joining Representative Bridenstine and letting him play the role of a blocking back. Let me say, as chairman of the Space Subcommittee, I am proud and deeply gratified that President Trump has nominated Representative Bridenstine to lead NASA. And I will say this committee's sorry performance during the confirmation hearing may not be surprising in the current environment, but is disappointing nonetheless. Senator Booker said a few minutes ago that the leader of NASA should be inspirational. I agree with that. And I can think of very few people I have known who are more inspirational than Jim Bridenstine. We've seen, sadly, Democrats attempting to malign your character. And yet you have spent your entire adult life in public service. You're a war hero. Now, you're too modest to say that yourself, but I'm perfectly happy to say that. Your record of defending this nation is remarkable, including flying combat missions in Iraq and Afghanistan, earning the Air Medal, and Navy and Marine Corps Commendation Medal with Combat V for your heroic achievements. Your combat missions included airborne battlefield command and control and tactical air control flights in support of the liberation of Iraq, controlling over 180 kill box interdiction and close air support missions, resulting in the destruction of countless tanks, armored vehicles, and time-sensitive and fixed targets. You later transitioned to the F-18 Hornet while on active duty, serving at the Naval Strike and Air Warfare Center, Top Gun Command, where you flew both the E-2 and F-28, there receiving fitness reports from your commanding officers, which rated you as, quote, the #1 Hawkeye pilot and weapons and tactic instructors, and, quote, the most tactically skilled pilot in the E-2 community. That is a remarkable record, and then you have had an honorable service in the United States Congress. You are a friend, a personal friend, and I will tell you, and I want to tell this committee that Jim Bridenstine is a man of deep character and integrity. I will also note, I met this morning with an astronaut who had spent over 100 days on the space station. Quite a number of the astronauts at NASA have backgrounds very much like yours. In terms of someone who can lead NASA, who can look in the eyes of an astronaut and understand what they're being asked to do, I think you bring exceptional fitness to this job. Now, some of my colleagues on this committee seem to be putting forward the notion essentially that a member of Congress can't be expected to lead NASA, especially not a member of Congress who was actually, God forbid, a Republican and even a conservative Republican. I'd like to ask you, Representative Bridenstine, in your view, what's the difference between the job of a member of Congress and the job of administrator of NASA?
Thank you for the question, Senator. I see it the same as the difference between my job, as you mentioned, as a Navy pilot and my job as a member of Congress. As a Navy pilot, politics really didn't come into it. In fact, we were a very diverse group of people trying to accomplish a very specific mission at various times. And it was apolitical. I know what it is to serve as a member of Congress, and I know what it is to serve in the executive branch. I understand how the two are very different, and should I be confirmed to the NASA administratorship, I would conduct myself in a very nonpartisan way, doing what is in the best interest of the United States of America exclusively.
You know, I will note the ranking member of this committee has a deep and abiding interest in space, going back a long time, and he and I have worked together very closely. This committee has managed to avoid some of the partisan wrangling that other committees get drawn into. And one of the reasons why we've been able to pass in the last couple of years 2 major pieces of space legislation is because of the bipartisan cooperation on space, both NASA and commercial space. I believe you're going to get confirmed, but I would say to my Democratic friends on this committee that if the confirmation ends up going down as a party line vote, I think that would be deeply unfortunate for NASA and for the space community. I understand the political pressures Democratic members of this committee feel and Democratic members of the Senate feel, but I believe the bipartisan cooperation we have had has been integral to space, and I hope it continues, and I hope we see Democrats courageous enough to recognize your extraordinary record of service and personal integrity, and can come together. I enthusiastically support your nomination and look forward to voting to confirm you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Cruz. I think, Senator Nelson, you have a couple follow-up questions.
A couple of questions on safety, Congressman. The Dragon spacecraft and the Starliner commercial crew capsules are nearing their first test flight. It was originally stated in NASA's authorization of 2010 and recently affirmed in NASA's transition authorization of 2017, the NASA bills 2010 and 2017. The NASA administrator in those 2 bills, now law, is responsible for ensuring the safety of NASA's astronauts aboard these vehicles. This senator has lived through the loss of 2 space shuttles, in which, in the case of one, the final go was by an acting administrator who was not technically up to date. It was an acting administrator. Interestingly, the administrator, Jim Beggs, was in his office having stepped aside because he had been indicted for something that he did not do and later proved that. And he's on the phone to the Kennedy Space Center begging them when he's seeing on his NASA TV in his office, which he hadn't vacated because he knew he would vindicate himself of the charges. But nevertheless, he was out of the decision-making loop. And he's on the phone, he's seeing the icicles, and he's calling the Cape. And he knows what rubberized gaskets called O-rings are, and he's begging the Space Center not to proceed with the launch. And yet it went right down to the final decision made by the then acting administrator. And the launch was made, and 10 miles high in the Florida sky, the Space Shuttle Challenger exploded because of the cold weather. Now, since you don't have an engineering or scientific background, and as NASA administrator, you would make that final decision, how do you think that you can fulfill that responsibility?
Thank you for that question, sir. When we think about the organizational structure of NASA, there are independent technical authorities that have responsibility over various areas of safety. And I want to be clear before I even start, sir. I understand that the NASA administrator is responsible for human safety, and I understand that those decisions ultimately will be mine and that I will be accountable. I understand that. These independent technical authorities, whether it's safety or engineering, there's another one that's health and medicine, those independent technical authorities provide independent guidance to the NASA administrator, and they're on the same level within the organization as the programs. It would be my goal, should I be confirmed as the NASA administrator, to, of course, have those independent technical authorities remain independent. And what I mean by that is that they're not funded by the programs themselves, which sometimes has been the case, but they need to remain independent. And ultimately, if there is some kind of technical discrepancy, there will absolutely be a decision made on the ninth floor of the NASA building, and it would include myself as the NASA administrator, but it would also include the COO of the organization, the associate administrator, and the associate administrator for human exploration and operations. And people like Robert Lightfoot and Bill Gerstenmaier will continue at the organization, and I know that there's no way of knowing how long or what their life ambitions are beyond NASA, but people like that will be very involved in informing the decisions going forward.
Those independent technical authorities that you mentioned, such as the NASA chief engineer and the chief safety officer.
Yes, sir.
You may ponder, what if you received advice that was in conflict from both of them? And thus, a NASA administrator has to make that judgment right as we are on the cusp of major decisions of going back into space with humans on American rockets, and of course the launching of the Mars program. I would just, would you all take that to the witness? I wanted you to see what Senator Booker had early referred to and had entered into the record in response to your previous statement. If you will look, this is the income tax return of the Tulsa Air and Space Museum, and what it shows in 2009, the prior year, it had total revenue of $1.2 million, and in the current year it had, meaning the current year of 2009, 977,000 revenue. But when you subtract the expenses, the revenue less expenses, it was exactly what you were asked earlier, that the income in the prior year was $73,000, and the income in the year 2009 was a negative $311,000. And so if you want to comment on that
Sure.
Instead of a statement later, but if you want to do it in writing, that's okay.
So just to be clear, this is an income tax return from 2009. The last time I would have seen this would have been 2010, and I'm seeing it right now again for the first time in 7 years. I'm just going to recall, to the best of my ability, what the Tulsa Air and Space Museum was up to back then. We had a number of big projects that we were investing in, and yes, we had cash reserves to do that. And working with the Tulsa Air and Space Museum Board of Directors, we did big projects. Now, some of those projects include an effort to acquire a retiring space shuttle for the city of Tulsa that would be at the Tulsa Air and Space Museum. And in that effort, working with the city of Tulsa and the Tulsa Air and Space Museum and the Board of Directors, we made an intentional investment to try to make that happen. At the time, we also had an air show that attracted 40,000 people, and that was an investment. The goal here was to increase, at the time, the attendance at the Tulsa Air and Space Museum. But I want to be really clear. I was making these decisions with a board of directors that was very involved in all of these decisions. As far as the cash loss, these were intentional at the time, and I presume all of this is accurate. I trust that it's all accurate. We were making those investments. I will tell you that when this came up as an attack piece in the campaign, which I'm not new to this kind of activity, the Tulsa Air and Space Museum got involved, and because the board of directors, and they rejected this notion that somehow I did something wrong entirely. And because they were willing to do that, quite frankly, sir, it backfired on my opponent in a way that got me elected to the House of Representatives, which is why I'm here before you today. That's to the best of my recollection what occurred. I will tell you this: the Tulsa Air and Space Museum is an absolute jewel for the city of Tulsa. It continues to educate and inspire young folks. The folks there that run the museum are exceptional people. Like I said, when I turned 40 years old 2.5 years ago, I had my birthday party at the Tulsa Air and Space Museum. Senator Cruz actually came to it. And so I am very proud of my service there. In fact, I had lunch with one of the board directors just last week. It is an exceptional organization. And I'll tell you this, and I think this is important as well. Museums like this are all across the country, and they serve NASA very well. NASA is an organization that does inspire young people. And these kind of institutions that are nonprofits, remember the goal here was not to make this is a nonprofit institution. We were investing in the education and inspiration of young people. And yes, we did have, we had donors that were enabling us to do this. It's a great organization. NASA should be encouraging this kind of activity all across the country because they are among NASA's greatest promoters. I will also tell you that the Tulsa Air and Space Museum just recently invited me to be the honorary chairman of their big event every year called the Aviator Ball. So this is a kind of an attack piece from many years ago. and it doesn't accurately represent my tenure there at all.
Okay. I'll submit additional questions for the other members of the panel, of which you have not had a lot of questions. I will submit those questions for your consideration. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Nelson, and I want to thank all, again, our panelists for being here today. We respect your public service, and Congressman, you're a combat veteran. We respect your service to our country and the sacrifices that you and your family have made in that regard, and your public service since, and all of you who have had stints in public service. We appreciate that, and your willingness to continue to serve. These are tough jobs, and these confirmation hearings probably aren't real fun. But nevertheless, it's a part of the process. And so thank you for your responses to our questions. And my guess is that the other three of you may get more questions for the record probably than perhaps you got here. But I would ask you, our members, to submit those questions as quickly as possible, and if possible, for you to get those responses to us, because we are trying to close out the record of this hearing by Friday, which will be, I know, a little challenging. But if we can get our senators get their questions in, get the written answers to the committee, we'll try and do that by the November the 6th, which would be, I guess, Monday next. And then we'll try and move forward with all of your nominations here at the committee level. Again, thank you for being here. Appreciate you all coming, and we'll, with that, adjourn the hearing.